I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association. I'm a beekeeper. I'm politically inclined. I spend a lot of time on that. There's no spare time in my schedule at all.
Sounds
Hardly,
very busy.
So I squeeze in what I can here. And I teach at MCC. My job is to help them because they do what they want pretty much. All I can do is guide them a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of like a teacher.
Yeah.
4 years, approximately. I think it's about 4 years. I started with 2 hives and it gradually worked up a little bit. What you need to do is, as a local goal, is you need to find a bee that works for your area. Because of the winters, because of the summers, because of all those things. You want to find a bee that works well and survives well over winter, produces a good amount of honey, doesn't die out. The queens last a while. There's a number of bees that have their own different plants that uniquely pollinate. So it's not just honeybees, but honeybees produce all the honey, so they get the credit for everything. The nurse bees clean out, basically the recently born bees clean out the holes for her to lay the eggs in. The nurse bees also fill a certain amount of queen jelly and use bee bread and pack it in there a little bit around the pupae that is then grown after 7 days. And then they cap it over, and it stays capped over for another couple of weeks, depending on whether it's a boy or a girl. The boys grow bigger than the girls.
Okay.
The boys are useless. They just feed off the honey and everything else that the bees bring in, and their only purpose in life is to mate with the queens. That's their only purpose in life. But depending on their age, they'll go through several different stages of working within the hive, and then they'll eventually become foragers. And then when they get older, they'll come back and they'll be more like guard bees, and they'll try to keep other non-bees out of the hive. Fall bees have to last until spring, because if they don't, they can't raise babies in the hive, because the babies have to be brought up in a 95-degree environment. Okay, which means that they got to generate enough heat around those eggs and pupae to be able to get them to then come out and survive at lower temperatures. But a normal bee is only going to be lasting 3 months. And each bee, they'll consume sugar, they'll consume nectar, they'll consume honey. And with that energy, the wax glands on their backs will produce these wax flakes. But then they reform those wax flakes into the comb itself on each of the foundations that I provide to build out the hexagonal shapes that they then lay the eggs in, or fill with bee bread and or prepare for eggs. For honey, they'll put honey in a particular cell, and it's usually around the cells that are being used for laying purposes. But now they'll fill those cells with the nectar, which is high concentration of water. They fan those cells, they reduce the water percentage down to about 18% or maybe a little less, depending on the nectar source. And at that point, they use more wax to cap over it. And the wax is pretty much a moisture barrier, and it'll prevent further moisture from going back into the honey, because honey itself will absorb water. When I first moved here, and when I moved to Rochester, there aren't a whole lot of bees for my garden. Nothing was getting pollinated at sea. I didn't see hardly any bees at all. I said, and I'm reading all about bees and sustainability and all that kind of thing, and I said, well, let's give it a shot. What am I going to do in my old age? And so I gave it a shot, got a couple hives, and it made a big difference in just my garden. Without bees, there are a lot of fruits and vegetables we wouldn't have. We would change our diets radically if we didn't have bees.